There's a bunch of big news in relation to Sound of Freedom. Right now, the film has broke $100 million at the box office, which is really, really good. Also, there is a bunch of news coming out about a journalist who is wrote a very, very bad article in which he's criticizing the film Sound of Freedom as QAnon nonsense. But what you realize when you look into him is that he likes very, very bad things, and he's a very, very, very bad person, is he not, Mary?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say that Trump showed Sound of Freedom at his golf club recently, and that's also setting people off. And he had like people like Carrie Lake there, Jack Posobiec, and it's all the criticism toward this movie is not really about the content of the movie. It's that the wrong people like it, and they admit openly that, you know, the content of this movie doesn't actually have any QAnon messaging or like buzzwords in it. And, it's just things that Tim Ballard or Jim Caviezel have said in interviews that they don't like, which has nothing to do with it. And we ignore celebrity interviews about their work all the time.
To our detriment, because now we're about to go watch an awful Barbie movie.
We give them the benefit of the doubt, and we never get it back in return.
If we had taken the interviews of the Barbie castmates as gospel, we would have known what garbage we were about to get into tonight.
This article from The Guardian said, Trump hosts screening of Sound of Freedom, a hit with QAnon devotees. And then this article that this very sussy individual, what is his name, Noah Berlatsky, wrote?
Correct.
Says QAnon and Sound of Freedom both rely on tired Hollywood tropes. Interesting.
Yep.
He also was the communications director for an organization called Prosasia, which calls itself a child protection advocacy organization, but is actually just a MAP organization for minor attracted persons. And that's their front, is that they're trying to protect children. They're the ones who really care. But they write articles like this.
Movie. Yeah, exactly.
Child trafficking narratives are misleading. Noah Berlatsky said he wrote about how child trafficking narratives are misleading and how that puts underage people who trade sex at risk. He said that child sex workers, this is what he calls them, not slaves, are actually not doing this because they've been coerced. It's because it's their autonomous choice to do so. And he said, I think a lot of the important takeaways from the piece is that underage people who trade sex generally see trading sex as a solution to other problems: lack of housing, lack of food and parental support, lack of money. No one is arguing with that, but it's weird to make this your cause. You know what I mean?
It's stuff like that that makes me like Andrew Tate a lot more. Although a lot of what he says is problematic. You know that I do like what he says about like we need strong men, because to me this is something, it's like disgusting to even hear a grown man talk about this kind of stuff. And we need other, women too, but I think other men to keep this type of stuff in check. I think that's what we're lacking a lot in society today.
I mean, I don't think that Andrew Tate is the avatar of that cause, given that one of his charges is trafficking minors.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
That is one of the charges. It's because, as I said, that girlfriend that he used to recruit other women into the webcam business is one that he met and had start webcamming when she was 15.
I do recommend.
He's admitted on video.
I also recommend everyone watch the Shoe on Head video about this guy after the stream today.
Yeah, Shoe on Head found this guy a year ago. She exposed this guy a year ago before any of this ever happened. He also wrote an article called "Child Sex Workers' Biggest Threat is the Police."
Yeah. It's the world we live in now.
One of his tweets from 2017 says, pedophiles are essentially a stigmatized group. Certain people are designated as deviants and people hate them.
You know what the problem is? Everyone has the internet, and if you're like mildly okay at speaking, you can intellectualize the most awful ideas in history in a way that other awful people will then latch on to.
He's not that clever though.
But is this just exposing it, or is this like creating more of that ideology?
What it is people latch on to this then. Like you said, he's active in forums and other places where they're talking about this, and it's very, very terrifying because back in the day, you know, they wouldn't be given a public platform to do so, but a lot of people would argue like let them, so that way they expose themselves and let them show the contemptible personalities that they have, so that you can be better forewarned and forearmed about what's actually going on in society. And it's scary to think that people like that are then able to work for major companies like Bloomberg and write articles to spite a movie that has nothing to do with QAnon at all. I'm still upset that they declared it or labeled it as a political thriller. Which it's not. If child trafficking is a political aspect, it's ridiculous.
I was thinking about this. I was like, if I was not from this planet and I didn't know anything about politics, like he writes in here, it has been a surprise success in cinemas with both traditional conservatives and the far right. And this is an anti-child sex trafficking movie. I would come here and be like, those are the kind of people that I want to hang out with. These sound like the good people. They're trying to frame it as something that's negative. And I personally, I don't identify as any of these things. But the fact that he's trying to frame that as a bad thing is astonishing to me. It's a bit of a reach.
The movie is bad because people that I don't like enjoy the movie. Pretty much.
And
that's his argument.
Which is insane because there's plenty of movies that people don't like that I have no problem with who that person is.
This guy in Shuan Head's video, this guy was defending cuties and saying that disliking cuties is actually because people hate black female film directors.
Yeah. Also, remember, parents are oppressive.
This has been his cause for years, is downplaying these issues of people being predatory toward children and defending pedophiles.
And he still has a platform.
I mean, so does Simu Liu. He's in the Barbie movie, and he was caught with this Reddit account where he was talking about how we need to have more compassion and sympathy for pedophiles.
We talked about the Good Doctor episode.
No one actually cares about this stuff in the establishment.
We talked about the Good Doctor episode that covered this a while ago. Like, these things have become more mainstream to talk about in a way that's almost shocking.
Yeah. Another one of his tweets from 2020 says, "Parents are tyrants. Parent is an oppressive class, like rich people or white people."
Yep.
Yeah, parents are oppressing you when they don't want you to talk to their children and give them candy from your white van.
You can't stay up late, therefore you're oppressing your own child, by the way. Like every time your parents ever disciplined you ever, they were actually they were exerting patriarchal or matriarchal power over you. As a child, you should be allowed to make your own decisions because they have autonomy.
I knew I was right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's one thing for this guy to argue like we shouldn't criminalize underage sex workers, but it's a whole other argument to say we shouldn't criminalize the people who are their customers who are committing a crime.
He also says he basically says that law enforcement has a problem with it because how dare they go after the people hurting kids is what he's saying.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I can't believe it's even a discussion.
Yeah,
like I can't believe that.
But the thing is like what they've done is they've done this over time. They've introduced this little by little into the culture, first in the universities, on fringe websites, into the universities, slowly over time into entertainment, especially post 2016 in the election when the Overton window started to shift so drastically in Hollywood. It put this stuff far more mainstream. We're going to be talking later about an incel video from 2018 that's wasn't that long ago, but the culture was already shifting by that point, and Hollywood was starting to put out more and more absolutely bonkers stories because they're detached from what you, I, or the average everyday person understands as the real world. Because Hollywood is in many ways its own little bubble. It's a very, very wealthy, very, very...
It's fantasy land.
And it's a very influential bubble, but it is a bubble nonetheless. And it's scary because at the end of the day, they have tremendous influence and they wield tremendous influence over the generations, right? There's still plenty of people that are going to go out to movies. There's still plenty of people that watch these TV shows. Maybe not as much as did in the past, but it's terrifying. So
I also wanted to read this part from his article in Bloomberg. He said, anti-trafficking experts argue that the film's presentation of trafficking is misleading. Data points to a different picture as what is depicted in the film. The Counter-Trafficking Data Collaborative found that 67% of the children who are trafficked are 15 to 17 years old rather than young children. In 41% of the cases, a family member was involved. So, yeah, that data is about the majority of situations. But again, we've said this so many times, that's not what the movie was about. And they're not obligated to make a movie about the majority of the cases.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't these people the ones who want movies made about minority experiences.
Well, then you'd have to have different people make it because they wouldn't want the people who are making this movie to be making those movies or telling those stories anyways. And they wouldn't want that anyways because they're Catholics, right? Because Jim Caviezel is a Catholic, because the producers of the movie are Catholics, and Hollywood has a strong bias against Catholicism and just about any religion that's popular here in the West right now.
Yeah.
So, also, it is fair to point out, however, that Donald Trump did have a screening of this movie with Tim Ballard and Jim Caviezel there. He also apparently played the music video to Try That in a Small Town.
He did?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
I didn't know that
So,
part.
yeah. So I'm just
That's
picturing
funny.
Trump doing the Trump dance with the T-Rex arms to a song where it doesn't really work with the, you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, and he's just sitting
That
there.
confidence, though.
Yeah, well, he's got the ultimate confidence when it comes. I think it's the hat, because he always does it with the hat on when he's at the rallies. He puts the hat on and it turns him into a dance machine. It's just a very, very, very like slow moving and spatially very, very still dance machine. He doesn't move around a lot. He just kind of sways from side to side. It kind of looks like if he just moved his arm down, he could slow dance with Melania at the same pace. But I love it.
Also, Variety put out an article about who can learn from the Sound of Freedom's success, because this past weekend they were second to Mission Impossible at the box office over Insidious, The Red Door, Indiana Jones, and Elemental, making $27.3 million.
And right now, topping Mission Impossible in per screen average for seats sold, which is really, really good.
And you said that this article is surprisingly fair to Angel Studios.
They don't do a lot of the really, really over the top labeling. They don't do it.
Scared me.
It gets easier, I promise.
Okay.
It gets a
Came out
lot
of nowhere.
easier. It's that's what she said. But yeah, so it says Sound of Freedom is budgeted at $14.5 million. It really just runs through the facts of the matter. And you know what? People would be willing to be a lot more generous and fair to your publications if you wrote these things without some type of biased agenda behind it. So it's nice to see stuff like that once in a while. It says it's worth noting that Sound of Freedom was originally shot in 2018 before QAnon gained mainstream traction, but the practices of Ballard's Operation Underground Railroad have drawn criticism for false claims before, and the organization says has since stepped away from it. So it's like they point things out, but they don't go over the top with the labeling. They're not saying that you and your grandma who go to see this movie are both Q members. Like I said, when I was there, I had the poor lady with the walker, and I'm just picturing her with a Q walker and her Q t-shirt.
But it's not like the whole theater was full of
No.
elderly people. Like, it was all ages.
Yes.
It's just
Fair.
a good movie, even minus all the controversy behind it. I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah. You said that, did you tear up?
I did. I have this thing where I don't like to cry like at movie theaters, and that was one of the hardest ones.
Yeah.
I was really choking it back.
It's it's really funny. I was pointing out to somebody else. I said it depending on what makes you emotional, it could hit you from different places. Like the sheer degeneracy and the sheer evil of what you see early on is enough to make anyone sick to their stomach, right? But like imagine at the end if they'd not gotten the happy ending of the movie, that would have been soul crushing in a lot of ways, and perhaps more realistic.
Well, the
right?
ending is still a little bit crushing because you know that it's an unresolved issue globally, and I was just left feeling kind of angry and genuinely confused and asking like, why do these people do this? Like, it's a very complicated question. I definitely don't have the answer.
Yeah, I feel like I've been thinking about that for like 10 years since I was first like woken up, and I don't think I've ever gotten closer to understanding why people want to do that and why it's still continuing. I mean, I do to an extent understand why it's going on, and there's lack of action and a lot of nefarious.
Also, to know that the U.S. is one of the biggest consumers and producers of that type of content is scary, because like there are people walking around in society who you'd have no idea are complicit or active in that type of crime. So
I just don't know if it's one of those things where it's a lot of it is definitely because of the money that's behind it, right? So the type of money that wields power in an industry like that and something like that and something that awful also wields tremendous influence in something like Hollywood, which or politics in the government, because you sway public through policy, and movies and television because you sway the public through entertainment.
Right.
All of it is about power and control over the populace, just like controlling the lives and the fate of children is something that an evil minority of people would want to be able to monetize and control, so goes the same when they're talking about governmental policy or what movies are getting made or in many ways denied, like Sound of Freedom was in 2018 after they finished production and Disney said, no, I'm sorry. I don't think we're going to put this out. A lot of kids go missing every year. We're just going to leave it be because
at Disneyland.
No, that's true, right? Like, who is it? Who is Jeff Dye? Or comedian did a bit where he's like, I was in town for a show in Orlando and I wanted to go to Lego World. They wouldn't let me in because he was there without a kid. And he's like, in the bit is basically, he's like, we're trying to cut back on child abductions. And he goes, cut back? Shouldn't your goal be to stop the child abductions altogether? Right? But it's basically the idea is like they wouldn't let the guy in there because he's an adult male going to a park where there's a bunch of children. It's automatically creepy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like even if his intentions aren't that,
Yeah.
you know, they're just not going to risk it.
Well, because they can't have other people coming in and taking their source.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think at the end of the joke, his point is he says it wouldn't prevent an abduction because now I'm just going to go abduct a kid to bring him to the park so that I can get in.
Yeah.
So it's scary to see that these type of people have such influence in industries that are so wide reaching. And it's not like this is any different in any other aspects of society, just like they control the food lobby or the gun lobby or any of this stuff, all the things in which you exercise any amount of you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it, guys.
Because it's coming right
Yeah.
out.
I did better that time.
Yeah. All right. It's just, it's very scary to see. And it's scary to see that there's writers who are willing to go to bat for such monstrous causes in mainstream press outlets like Bloomberg. I'm assuming Bloomberg is the same Bloomberg who ran for president last election cycle.
Yeah, he was the governor
right?
of New York.
Yeah. So like, it's shocking to me that we as a society accept that. But what I've found is like, even when a movie like this wakes the public up, or at least wakes up a segment of the population, like you said, what was your story about, you felt like the police at the mall?
Yeah, I recently had to report suspected traffickers at a mall because I recognized what group they were from, and I had been approached by them several times throughout the years. And before I noticed that when I was talking to cops or security guards about them, they really didn't understand what I was talking about or take it as seriously as they should have. And this time, I just felt that it was markedly different. I don't know if they had seen Sound of Freedom, but I suspected that they might have, because immediately they were like, oh, like, we've heard about that. Like, oh, this happens in the real world.
Yeah.
And I know cops lean right, so maybe they're more likely to have seen it too. Maybe I'm just delusional in making that up, but I feel like given how popular this movie is, it's not unlikely.
But you'd think that with their profession, they would already know that stuff exists because it's part
You
of
would
their
think
job.
that,
Exactly.
but you know, they often don't take that type of crime seriously, or they look past it. So
Well,
People
the
are
movie,
so far removed from it that they don't
or they're far
think that it's
removed from
happening. And this is kind of like a reminder that you can't look away from, that it is still.
yeah.
but the movie's made $100 million. I was wrong. I offer my mea culpa. I said I didn't think it was going to hit $100 million. It continued to
I
grow.
thought that it would at least take until the end of this upcoming weekend
Yeah.
for them to get there, and it's looking like they're soaring past those heights. So
I love that.
That's great.
It's funny too, because it's like they use a lot of examples when they're talking about it, about a lot of what they call faith-based films that don't make that kind of money. I'm like, that's because nobody watching this movie
That's
would
because
call it
those
faith-based.
actually are faith-based films, which are niche, and this is not that.
The faith-based movies are they tend to be very, very
They are high on the cheese factor. If that's what you're into, that's fine. But
I liked Father Stu. I thought Father Stu was really,
That was
really
great.
well done, but otherwise it's just not the type of thing that the average person, they don't have the infrastructure to sell what they're trying to sell to you the same way that Hollywood does, which is much more sophisticated in its messaging.
Yeah.
Granted, these days it's not as good, but it used to be very, very good. They used to be very,
I
very
can't
good
even
with
think of a
propaganda.
faith-based movie apart from like Passion of the Christ.
Also starring Jim Caviezel.
Yeah.
Yep.
I saw Silence starring Ethan Hawke, and I thought that was a good one.
Wait,
I
is
love
that the
Ethan
one
Hawke.
with
Based in Japan.
Ethan Hawke and what's the other one that came out recently with Andrew Garfield? There was also one
Oh
starring
yeah,
Andrew
there
Garfield.
was another one starring Andrew Garfield. What was that called?
But I didn't see that one, but I know people like that one.
Okay, I
Yeah.
should watch that.
So, but I don't think that one was really thought of as
It was the one
faith-based.
where he said that he had to practice celibacy to prepare
for
for
like a
his
year.
role.
And like Kiki Palmer or somebody made fun of him for it online.
Yeah.
Like
okay.
just being a jerk. All right, let's go to Super Chats.
1,000 Foot Deep End said, it's a listen to PCC while working day for me, but I'm cleaning my new apartment. No time crunch means more time for Super Chats. Welcome, Sarah and Kara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah and Kara. You guys have
I
like
like
a
it.
duo
It
name
works.
now.
Hard to
We
forget.
need to get the other Sarah on here too.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody mentioned Nefarious. Nefarious was good.
That was really good.
Nefarious.
Oh, yeah, I
I
recently saw that
preferred.
one, too.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.